Undereating is equally bad actually as overeating. So many people do, go on, particularly people who are into weight loss, do crash diets and they would eat very low calories. And this essentially slows their metabolism down.
How do you maximize your metabolism? Is it getting more muscle mass, tapping into your circadian rhythm, changing your diet, or training your metabolic flexibility? Welcome to this classic episode of the Spartan Up podcast. We've scoured past interviews to find some of the best science and the best tips for you to improve your metabolism. You'll hear from our own Dr. Nada, host of Spartan Health. She talks about muscle mass and about circadian rhythms and tips to maximize your metabolism. And you'll hear a piece of Joe DeSena's interview with Apo and Alex from PNOE, who get into the science of metabolism and metabolic flexibility. And finally, an excerpt from Joe DeSena's interview with Dr. Alan Desmond, who explains how the gut microbiome can impact your metabolism. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com. Here's Dr. Nada to talk about the impact of muscle mass on your metabolism and 3 specific tips you can use.
Today, we're going to clear up a misconception about muscle and metabolism. It's become common knowledge that muscle burns so many more calories than fat. If you put on more muscle, the story goes, more calories just burn along with it. So increase your muscle mass, right? While it's true that muscle does burn more calories than fat, the importance of this difference may be a bit exaggerated. As it turns out, resistance training, which is often the preferred way to build muscle, is important in keeping many of the body's functions healthy and vibrant, but it's not the best way to lose weight. Not convinced? Here are some things to think about. Many studies that demonstrate how muscle mass increases your calorie consumption measure your body's total metabolic rate as a way to determine how new muscle mass burns calories. But that metabolic rate is a measure of all of a person's daily activities, not just that of the muscle mass. It turns out that on a daily basis, at the same time your muscles are working, so are other parts of your body, and they're burning calories too. Your organs are doing this all day long. Even fat burns calories indirectly by secreting proteins. Almost everything your body is doing outside of exercise is known as your basal or resting metabolism. You might be surprised to learn that the basal metabolism takes up 60 to 80% of your body's total consumption of energy. So, what are you going to do if you're looking to control your weight, but you don't want to do a lot more resistance training? Well, in a word, it's balance. Number 1, watch your calorie intake, but don't binge diet. In general, it's a simple equation. If you burn more calories than you consume, you'll probably lose weight. But there is a catch. Binge dieting may result in a permanent shift downward in your metabolism, so a gradual approach is definitely better. Number 2, drink lots of water. Drinking water can suppress your appetite, but drinking water also burns calories, especially cold water, because your body has to heat it up. And water is necessary to burn fat. Number 3, have a varied exercise routine. Guess what? That's exactly what any Spartan race will do. Weight training is good in this domain, but it's not the only thing. Daily aerobic exercise is a very efficient kind of movement for burning calories. But make sure to add little things to your daily routine. Take the stairs instead of an elevator, or walk to the local convenience store instead of using a car. And you've seen Joe, he's always carrying a kettlebell or a sandbag around. So even low-intensity activities like working in your backyard can add to your daily calorie output. So in short, how do I weigh in on only weight training to burn calories and to be in your best form? It's not enough. Activities that vary your routine not only prep you for your next race, but they keep your metabolism in good form too.
One more from Dr. Nada. In this, she talks about the impact of when you eat and your circadian rhythm on your metabolism.
We all know that it's important to pay attention to our daily food intake, but many people don't know this important fact. The number of calories your body retains is not only affected by how much you eat, but also by when you eat it. In this podcast, we're going to look at the impact of the body's daily cycles, its circadian rhythms. And we've talked about circadian rhythm before, but today we're going to go into it a bit deeper. And we're going to see how it supports the maintenance of healthier food intake and more efficient weight control. So the process by how your body breaks down food and turns it into energy is known as our metabolism. The metabolism isn't just what happens in your stomach. It refers also to a wide range of biochemical processes that are going on. So something that impacts your metabolism has a huge influence on your overall health and well-being. And an important driver of metabolism is a hormone called cortisol. Your circadian rhythm's connection to metabolism is that it helps trigger cortisol, which rises in the morning. Cortisol is what's called a get up and go hormone. It drives your metabolism, it supports thyroid function, and it contributes to the energy you can access to complete your daily activities. Because your metabolism is receiving a jump start from cortisol, the food you consume when cortisol is released has a greater likelihood to be burned and turned into fuel rather than stored as fat. Your circadian rhythm supports a diurnal release of cortisol. This means that 2 times per day, your cortisol levels peak, once in the early morning and again in the late morning. If you guessed that the opposite is true in the evening, you'd be right. As the sun goes down and night approaches, your body is winding down and it's getting ready for a good night's sleep. Part of that winding down is to lower cortisol levels. If you consume food during late hours, that food has a greater likelihood that it won't be turned into energy to accomplish tasks or goals, but instead it's more likely to be stored as fat. Using your body's own natural cycle to shape your eating habits can enhance weight loss efforts. And consuming food between approximately 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. is the optimal time for your body's needs. Knowing this, you should leave your midnight snacks behind and ride the circadian rhythm wave and cortisol peaks to maintain good eating habits that align with your body's natural inner clock.
What is metabolic flexibility and how can you improve it? That's what you're going to hear about next from Apo Atsalakis and Alex Wisch, along with Joe DeSena.
Yeah, so if you saw that I was burning a ton of sugar and optimally we want to burn fat, you would say, okay, Joe, you're not metabolically flexible. We gotta train your body to burn fat. What would you tell me to do to do that?
So we see your fat burn both during exercise and at rest. So the first thing that we would tell you is we will identify your zone 2 and we would tell you to train at your zone 2 in order, to teach your body to burn fat. Also, we will see whether your body is burning enough fats at rest. If not, you may need to decrease your carbs in your diet. And there are other things that help and teach our body to burn more fat, like fasting and decreasing, in general, the carbs in our diet.
Yeah, you know what I used to do to become metabolically flexible? I don't know if you're into this, Alex, but I'd be, my last meal was, say, at 7 o'clock the night before. I wake up in the morning, do a big workout, very intense, theoretically deplete glycogen, and then go on a long hike for hours, still having not eaten anything. My body has no choice. There's nothing left to eat but fat. So I think, in theory, I got to test it with the PNOE. I got to try the device, but I think I'm pretty metabolically flexible. And it is funny, when you tap into fat, Alex, I don't know if you agree with me or not, it's like that second, third wind, right?
Tapping into it, it's just a better source of energy. It's a more dense source of energy. So, especially on my end of the thing, I've done a lot of Spartan races, done a ton of your races, but on the ultras, using fat for fuel just lasts you a lot longer. It's more efficient.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Undereating is equally bad actually as overeating. So many people do, go on, particularly people who are into weight loss, do crash diets and they would eat very low calories. And this essentially slows their metabolism down. So it's very important to eat the right amount of calories, create sustainable caloric deficits, meaning that you need to be eating something like 85% of your daily energy expenditure, not less than that, because this will slow down your metabolism. Actually, this is probably the biggest obstacle that a sustainable weight loss program needs to overcome, because the challenge in weight loss is that as you're losing weight, you want to maintain a high metabolism. Because in most cases, because weight loss is not done correctly, the metabolism slows down. And after a point, the weight loss stops. So this is a very important takeaway that we have observed among our user base. The second thing that we've seen is that we can see the body's kind of limiting factors. So we screen the cardiovascular, the pulmonary, and the metabolic system. And always one of these three is the weakest point. By knowing your limitation, you can focus on this limitation during your training and improve it. For example, if someone has his limitation is coming from his heart, so he has a low aerobic capacity, we would understand this and tell him that he needs to focus more on high intensity interval training to work at these peak zones and start building some VO2 max. This will increase his performance. Another example is if we see a lung limitation, which is very common, we will see, for example, that the capacity of the lungs, the volume of the lungs is low. We would recommend a breathing workout to improve this. So knowing your limitation and focusing in order to improve it, it's very important. And something else, like the third takeaway that I would say, is that you need to pay attention to your fat burning efficiency. So make sure that you don't skip these low intensity workouts where you train at your zone 2. Know your zone 2 and train there to teach your body, to force your body to burn more fat.
Tell the audience what the zones are: zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, etc.
I'll give you a quick kind of overview, and then Apo can jump in and give a little more detail. So zone 1 is basically you're at rest, like lying in bed, totally relaxed, more or less at rest, might be sitting at your desk. Zone 2, we're out there potentially, depending on the person's fit level, you're walking, you might be hiking, you're starting to get into some type of aerobic activity and kind of getting that movement going, but not at like a running base, or not at a high running base. Zone 3, we start picking up. Now we're kind of running. Let's say we're able to still like maintain a conversation with someone while we're running, but we're kind of picking that higher point of that run, holding that conversation. Zone 4, if we're still talking about that kind of running piece, now you're running, you're starting to kind of lean a little bit away from having that conversation, harder to talk, but you're able to kind of push that level. And then we go into zone 5, which is like, you're kind of at that point where you can't sustain it. So you're doing that going all out, or kind of hitting that higher percentage of output, where you're working off that, like, that the ATP stores, you're working off that like energy stores you have very minimal of, and your body's unable to take in enough oxygen to satisfy the need of output that you're doing.
Some kind of characteristics of zones is that, zone 2 is like the zone that you're burning fat. Zone 5 is like your red zone, you're purely anaerobic, so you can sustain it probably for a couple of minutes. And by combining the zones, you can do efficient, for example, high-intensity interval training, which is going from zone 5 to zone 2, and then to zone 5, and then zone 2. So essentially, the zones is like the alphabet of workouts.
We'll be right back to this interview, but first a message from today's sponsor, DUROLANE. You know that knee pain can really slow you down. Sometimes that knee pain is due to osteoarthritis, a disease that affects some 14 million Americans. Learn about osteoarthritis knee pain and how to alleviate it at oakneepainrelief.com. You'll find information there about non-surgical, non-opioid treatments for osteoarthritis knee pain that may help delay the need for knee surgery. One treatment you'll find there is DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months of relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. It's indicated for the treatment of mild to moderate osteoarthritis knee pain when conservative treatments have not worked. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. Full prescribing information is at DUROLANE.com. Spartans say no to limits. You can learn more at oakneepainrelief.com. That's oakneepainrelief.com. All right, back to the interview. And finally, Dr. Alan Desmond, author of The Plant-Based Diet Revolution, talks about your gut microbiome and what you should and should not be eating in order to optimize that.
After 3 or 4 years after becoming a doctor, I'm dealing with patients with serious gut health issues in hospital. Crohn's disease, colitis, diverticular disease, colorectal cancer, dreadful gut health problems that land people in hospital. And I decided I wanted to be a gastroenterologist. All health begins in the gut, right? It's so important. That shouldn't surprise anyone. That's old information. Hippocrates of Cos was teaching that in the 5th century BC, while the original Spartans were at war with the Athenians. He was taking a more chilled out approach to life and teaching his disciples the foundations of modern medicine. And he taught his disciples that all disease begins in the gut. And there's so much truth in that ancient wisdom. And in looking for evidence-based answers for my patients with serious gut health issues, when they asked me, their doctor, what should I eat to improve my gut health and my overall health, the science is so clear now, Joe. It is crystal clear that health does begin in the gut for 2 reasons. Number one, the food that we put into our gut is the number one determinant of human health and longevity. Okay, that's a fact. And the food we consume 3 times a day, 4 times a day, decides whether our gut microbiome thrives and helps us to optimize our health, or whether it does the exact opposite. And right now, in countries where people eat a lot of meatballs and eat a lot of steak and eat the standard Western diet, which is a high meat, low fruit, low vegetable, high processed food, high junk food diet, gut health and overall health are on average terrible. And you use the phrase push back. What my book is about and my message about is helping people to push back against that, to push back against the standard Western diet. What should I eat is one of the most important questions of the 21st century and the most important questions of 2021. 2 years ago, February 2019, the Lancet Medical Journal, one of the biggest, most respected, most dependable medical journals in the world, set up a commission called the Eat Lancet Group. And they asked them, these were recognized experts from the University of Oxford, University of London, from the US, from Harvard, and they asked them to go and look at the science on food and health and answer that question. What should I eat? What should we all eat? From the 3.5 billion people in the world who get too much calories and are living with obesity and type 2 diabetes and heart disease and all those problems we see in countries like the US and the UK and Ireland, but also the 800 million people in the world who are suffering from food poverty and are living with a calorie deficit and can't get enough food. Can we give a blueprint for everybody that we should be aiming for? And they recommended, having looked at all the evidence, that we should be pushing for a global switch to a diet that is completely or predominantly whole food, plant-based. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, whole grains, these foods that you and your mom have been eating since the 70s. If we could get everybody in the world to eat like this and provide that food to them, we would prevent almost 12 million preventable deaths per year. Not to mention hundreds of millions of fewer cardiac stents, bypasses, courses of chemotherapy for colorectal cancer, prescriptions for statins, blood pressure meds. And it's not just me and Colin Campbell and Caldwell Esselstyn and all the doctors who wrote that report. A plant-based diet, the way you eat, Joe, is now endorsed as a healthy option by the British Dietetic Association, the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the Canadian Healthy Eating Guidelines, the American Cancer Society. This stuff is no longer fringe. Lentils and quinoa and all that food your mum loved in the 70s is completely doctor approved now. the healthier way to get your calories for sure. I also hammer home the message, there is no such thing as perfection, right? There is no such thing as a perfect human or a perfect diet. But the benefits of eating more plants should be available to everybody. They are available to everybody. It's not about labeling yourself as vegan or vegetarian or fruitarian or flexitarian or any Aryan. It's about choosing to build all of your meals, or most of them, from foods that are consistently proven to benefit human health. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes like peas, lentils, chickpeas, nuts, seeds, maybe a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Because when you look at the science, Joe, whatever country you're in, whatever culture you're in, the people who have the healthiest dietary intakes and the lowest risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, colorectal cancer, etc., are the people who would be described as vegetarian or vegan. And the reason for that is because when you eat more plants, you are correcting the most common dietary deficiencies that now exist in the Western world. You're eating more folate and fiber, vitamin A, C, E, thiamine, riboflavin. You're getting more healthy oils, more copper, magnesium, and yes, even more iron than people who are eating a standard Western diet. The COVID-19 pandemic really solidified my conviction in terms of promoting a healthier approach to food, because it absolutely shone an incredibly stark spotlight on how poor our underlying health is. We saw it in China, then we saw it in New York, then we saw it in the UK, that if you were living with the diseases that we view as inevitable, but they're not inevitable, if you were living with heart disease or type 2 diabetes or obesity or any of these chronic diseases, if you're infected by COVID, you are going to statistically have a much worse outcome. So these diseases that we know for years have been, reducing our life expectancy, making us spend time at the hospital, have bypass graft surgery, colorectal cancer, etc. These same conditions are a real and present threat if you're infected by COVID-19. We know that diet drives these illnesses. We know that if you're infected with COVID and you have one of these illnesses, you do terribly badly. I haven't seen any studies yet looking at dietary intakes and outcomes when you're infected by COVID, but we have seen studies looking at what COVID-19 does to your gut health, causing inflammatory reactions. And we know that in individuals who have more severe COVID-19, a more critical course of the disease, that within their gut microbiome, they have fewer of the bacteria that thrive on plants, that thrive on fiber, the beneficial microbes. So that's a clue. That's a very big clue, but I'm sure that evidence is going to come out soon. Protein, quality. When you choose to eat meat to get your calories and your protein, what are you getting? You're getting the amino acids of the protein, sure, but you're also getting cholesterol and saturated fat. You're getting these funky chemicals that are produced when you cook meat, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and heterocyclic amines. These are pro-inflammatory and pro-carcinogenic. You are consuming heme iron, which is an unhealthy form of iron, which again increases the risk of bowel cancer and heart disease and is pro-inflammatory. You're getting sodium nitrate and nitrites, which your body turns into N-nitroso compounds, which are carcinogenic. We know they cause colon cancer. You're eating a lot of a substance called carnitine, which promotes the growth within your gut microbiome of certain bacteria that metabolize that carnitine and turn into a substance called TMA, which is implicated in causing heart disease and atherosclerosis and stroke. Okay, so you put that aside today, and instead you have some plants. All plants contain protein. Beans and lentils are a particularly good source. So now you're getting the same calories, you're getting the same amino acids, you're getting the protein you need to get big and strong, but what are you getting it with now? So the cholesterol and the saturated fats and the heme iron, all those things are now absent. But you are getting fiber, which we only get from plants. You're getting a diversity of fiber. Eating the rainbow, eating all these different plants is going to benefit your gut health, your microbial health, and your overall health. You're getting vitamin A, C, E, vitamins, folate, riboflavin, potassium, magnesium. You're correcting the deficiencies that are the main drivers of illness in the Western world. You're getting phytonutrients. We're back to ancient Greece again. Phyto, the word comes from plants. Phytonutrients. These are chemicals that keep you healthy, that improve your health. You will only get them from fruits and vegetables. You will not get them from animal products. You're getting things like carotenoids, from your yellows, from your carrots and peppers. You're getting resveratrol from your dark red berries. All of these things benefit human health. You're getting antioxidants. These are substances that help to reduce the damage of everyday living. Okay, prevent oxidation, prevent aging, reduce aging. So if you choose to build every single meal from a big selection of plants, you are getting all those benefits with every spoon of food or every fork of food that goes into your mouth. So I agree with you. We got to meet people where they are. But I think we need to be absolutely clear that a bean stew is always healthier than a beef stew. Whether you're having that once a month, once a week, or once a day, plants are always the healthier choice.
Thanks for listening to this classic episode of the Spartan Up podcast. Remember, whatever task you're taking on, you will need resilience of mind, body, and spirit. And we're here to be your partner with reminders, techniques, and strategies 3 days a week to help you stay on track. Whatever app you listen in, click that follow button or that subscribe button to make sure you get notifications and you don't miss valuable information. See you next time. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.